are you still okay with that, or have you got any changes?
I'm good. I don't remember anything, so I'm good with this.
All right, no problem. It's good to have an improvised, discussion.
Oh yeah, it's gonna be totally improvised.
Okay, no problem. I also wanted Nadine to show some awareness, at least, of recent developments in your home country, and it's completely fine if you don't want to bring it up at all. At the same
Mm,
time, I hope everything's okay with your extended
mm.
family and yourself.
I appreciate this. I am disgusted,
Yeah,
um, and I'm concerned. I mean, no, thank you. I was, I was just coming from a meeting with the ex-director of the NGA, who's
yeah,
now the chairman of the board, and I'm like, having grown up during the war, I don't listen to the news, so I'm not
yeah,
listening to the news. But what I have is WhatsApp groups of people losing people. So now
yeah.
you get these messages: I lost this and that. That village they destroyed is the village where we were hiding,
Oh, wow.
when we were escaping. So it's
Right.
very personal. But most importantly, I was telling him, and this is very disturbing. So I tell them, when we were growing up, and this is a totally different thing,
Yeah,
but the technologies were different. So at night, the Israelis would drop what we used to call the light bombs. So they're bombs, they don't explode, they just create like a lot of light, right? So it's like blinding light in the middle of the night. I think to take pictures or something.
yeah,
I don't know, right? So that was like the terror at night. But now my friends, again, because I don't listen to the news, they're saying they cannot sleep at night because of the sounds of the drones that
yeah.
go between buildings, shooting anything that has light
Oh,
in
man.
it. And it's just like, and going back to actually to our conversation, I don't think that's why I ever wanted to do work with drones or
Yeah,
with location. And that's the disgusting part to me. It's like, actually, I don't want nothing to do with this.
right. Yeah, and I guess it's a haunting thought that our industry actually probably there is a lot of activity
Yeah.
revolving around insight from our industry there. It's a sad reality. Yeah,
So that was so I tell them, you start to see it. So I went to the GeoEnt symposium, right?
yeah,
And I've been
sure.
every year for the last 4 years since I was at OGC. And this last one, and even I have spoken on a podcast about it, but it
Yeah,
was like a more, intimate. Um, it left me feeling very weird because all of a sudden every session had the word war, adversary,
sure.
enemy, attack, and then we're talking about drones with AI and targeting. I was like, yeah, yeah, yeah. you know I'm there for the technology and the trends and all of this, but you could sense, because they were like, China and Russia and
Yeah.
Ukraine and Israel, and I'm like, where are we going with all of this?
Right. I mean, so I've actually sitting next to me on the bookshelf, if I can, speaking of
Yeah.
AI, get it. So
Yep.
there's this book that I'm reading, Free the Map, by what's his name? Henk van Houtem, who's a Dutch academic, and it is in preparation for an episode with him. And there's
Mm.
all sorts of maps. That the bookmark for me at the moment is it's all about migration, or sort of because he's from the EU. Goodness me, the silly back. It's detecting that as background.
Yes,
Let me.
I see
So
it.
it's
Yeah, I
got
see
a
it.
map. So there's maps in here all about migration because that's a theme. The issue
Yeah.
of what can I say?
Mm.
Migration from trouble spots around the world. And
Yeah.
my response to this.
Mm.
Again, I understand it is a reality that is a common application of our industry, but
Mm.
surely the power of maps should be deployed, and to me, it could be deployed with far greater efficiency in terms of just the financial costs of war and in
Yeah.
terms of saving lives. Deployed for diplomacy and ambassadorial reasons.
Yeah.
And I am just as interested in the power of geospatial for that.
Yeah. I think that's a podcast in and of itself. There's something to me off with the world. There's something off with the world, because what I'm noticing, and I have kids, and I don't understand how people with kids still, at the highest level kill and celebrate killing of, regardless who they're, it's still killing, right? It's actually killing, right? And when I look at, how much are we spending again on education, the trends with universities, mental health. So again, having a teenager and seeing all the struggle, which we haven't recovered from COVID actually, and how messed up these people have been during that period. And now the latest statistics is like the ages of 18 and 24, the mental health issues is like at a record high. And is anybody talking? No, we want to kill and more money for defense and weapon exchange. It's like who is running this world?
I mean, so I haven't been to any of these conferences, but it's interesting to hear you say that AI was somehow, you gave me the impression, I could be wrong, but that AI was somehow being used for target identification and for somehow reducing the friction for ending somebody's life, if I can put it that way. And so what that brings up for me is the laws of robotics, and how like the first one is supposed to be that ultimately it should not be used to kill. And this is so at the risk of sounding dramatic, alarm bells are ringing that the AIs that are being deployed in this way are not, first of all, making it hard to kill.
Oh, no. I mean, no. And honestly, this is again, because we're close to DC and this is the GeoInt community. What's happening in Israel, Gaza, Lebanon is a test. They're running tests. They're validating technologies because the lives of people don't matter.
Right. Well, this is deeply problematic.
Saying, so at the conference, and this is what I say, is it's like when you go like, you would be, this is on the stage, and you can probably find those panels where, so when on the stage they say, we are all for ethical and responsible use for AI. However, our adversaries are not. So what does that tell you, right?
Yeah. Okay.
So it means like we really want to be ethical, but if they're not ethical, so this was, and we should then move on.
Sure.
So we did this global rankings for commercial satellite imagery providers to see, where the countries fit. And of course, this was coming from a US perspective. And one of the conclusions is that the US, needs to maintain its leadership. So in that closed group, again, given everything that's happening, and it's personal to me, I was like, I think we're starting to confuse leadership with world domination.
Yeah.
And it's different. And then there's world domination at all costs.
Yeah.
That is, so that's why I'm saying, all in all, I feel like there's something off.
Yeah.
And I don't know.
No,
I really don't know.
All right, I agree with your point to move on. All right. So, Nadine Alamay, as in your words, long-time cheerleader of Geospatial, currently executive director of Taylor Geospatial Institute. It is an enormous privilege to have you on the Geospatial Index. Mahaba, Enti Kifik.
أنا منيحة أهلا وسهلا.
Alhamdulillah Zain.
I like.
Okay, so we have an interesting agenda. First cab off the rank is the journey personally for you from computer science to, I'm going to say, information systems about geospatial, to XML, to APIs, to cloud, to digital twins, then gaming, then OGC, and now the Taylor Geospatial Institute. Could you please string all of those together for us?
Yes, I would love to, because I love how you put it together. So yes, so let me start by saying I'm happy to be here, and thank you for your time, and thank you for anybody who's listening. the journey is a pure luck, I think. Like you said, I started with computer, engineering, actually undergrad in Beirut, Lebanon. And, going to MIT was not even a dream. It was like something you would never, ever dream of because you can never afford it to start with. But they had these scholarships, and one of them was on GIS in the urban planning department at MIT. And I was one of the top 4 students. Long story, somebody gives you a ticket, you take it, you go to MIT, you get it.
Was this the American University of Beirut?
Absolutely. Yes. So that's when, life transforming is an understatement, because it didn't only transform my life, it transformed the life of my family, right? And so here we are. And I think this is when it was this shift between computer science and this thing that's geospatial information, that's not a field and not an industry, and it's everywhere. Once you see it, you cannot unsee it, like the power of linking things, geographically. So this is how it started. And I think I always say I blame my advisor because at the time, like any projects we had to do, he required me to do it, and not just Esri. So it's like, no, you have to show it how it works in Esri software and GeoMedia and Map Info at the time. And this is what led me to the standards, because you do it once, there's one API,
Absolutely.
There's one web service. And so standards is a great way for a busy/lazy, graduate student to get things done. And this was at the same time when Landsat published all of Landsat via the OGC web mapping service. So it was just like, again, the timing is amazing.
What year was that?
That was early 1990s, mid 1990s. Wow. So between 1995 and 97.
Okay. I was still at school.
Yes, me too. We're not going to say which school. But so this is a long story, right? Because, this was the very beginnings. And then there was this moment in time, which was 9/11, where you had to bring data for, it was like the perfect use case, but also the timely use case for, satellite imagery and aerial imagery and LiDAR data. It's like everything. By the way, the next, if you want, big thing was COVID, right? In terms of just like, going from geeks to everybody. So long story, I think I got hooked on the Open Geospatial Consortium, this concept of standardization and this concept of collaboration. Because I still believe you cannot standardize if you don't collaborate. You cannot solve big problems, climate, disasters, if you don't collaborate. So sometimes it's not about the technology, it's about the collaboration, bringing the right parties together. And then we went through this. I think this is the beauty of geospatial. We went from like XML and SOAP, and then everybody was doing JSON and open API. So we did the shift. So when I was at the OGC, I was the CEO for 5 years, during which we shifted to all APIs. That was huge, because all of a sudden, again, it's open APIs, it's JSON, which means any developer can integrate this location data. We also started to be cool, right? Geospatial and location, so mixing and matching. And that's really, really huge. And then came the cloud. Right.
Hang on. So what year is this? Because I want to. Yes. The year is meaningful to me because I think I remember finding out that in a team that I used to be in at another organization, the apprentice that we have, he was born the year that the WFS standard was released.
You guys are so young. So from memory, and I think we can look it up, because the simple features recently celebrated, is it like a 30th anniversary or something, like a really I'm not that old,
No
listeners.
problem. I think it was 2002 that we were talking that this guy was born. And I was like, wow, so your whole life, that standard was set up for you to be born and then to enter this career, and then we're ready for you.
So I remember the web mapping service was 1999, right? So I definitely remember that. The first OGC API features was 2019, right? So 1999, 2009, 2019. So 20 years later.
So it must have been something else that we were talking about. Yep.
Came the API. So as in like formal, right? Because, you know, sometimes you release something for the community to work with and you develop it, but this is like, it becomes a standard, right? Stack, by the way, which everybody is using, you know, the spatial temporal access catalog, 2017 is when, again, they've been working on it, but it's when they said, here it is, this is the first version, you know, who's on board. So, and if you think about it, which I feel you're thinking about, it's like, yes.
I do think as we go along.
It's because it's like, things took a long time initially, and then now it's like, right? It's like, you cannot keep up. I was looking the other day because I participated in Phosphor-G North America in St. Louis. It was like a month ago, maybe not even a month ago. And did you know, like, there are 37, right, geospatial Python packages, open source, go, be happy. How cool. And I think it's amazing. It's really amazing.
And you must be proud in terms of your legacy then, I think, because, I guess you feel that you're somehow responsible in some ways for the emergence of those.
We are all responsible, but it makes you like, we did this, we're in the middle of this. And so, like, speaking of the journey, right? So there was this cloud thing where it changed the philosophy, right? I don't even need just like a bounding box and give it to me and I'll get it in my software that has to be a GIS software, right? Now it's just like, I can do it on the cloud. It doesn't have to be a GIS software because I can integrate it via the other API. It's just like beautiful story, right? It's amazing. I'm also very, like, I call it in the last even 4 years, something like that's mind-blowing. And I think that's the new link to the AI and the machine learning and simple things like Meta, Facebook, right? Releasing segment anything, right, Sam? And you see now there's a whole GitHub on, you know, segment anything geospatial, right? Because instead of you following, I don't know if you've seen the ads for segment anything, they have this dad with a soccer ball with his son and they click on the ball and the socks. And so instead of ball and socks, it could be anything. I was like, it's so cool. It's so cool. And we're doing it. I like that. I really like that.
I mean, I have to comment here. So something I've noticed, like on LinkedIn, every now and again, something crops up. And the latest thing relating to cloud is this little advocacy group, literally called Cloud Native Geospatial. So is that known to you? Is that what you're expecting to sort of emerge? And I don't know, have you got any more commentary around this idea of Cloud Native Geospatial?
No, this is the time. This is the time for many reasons. And I don't know if I can say this, but I'm going to say this anyways. This is so important that actually our next big initiative in the Taylor Geospatial Institute, which is a new institute, and we'll talk about it, is actually to build a cloud native geospatial center of excellence.
Wow. Okay.
Right? Yep. It's very important because we're changing the paradigm, right? We're trying to, what do they say? What's the word? Democratize geospatial. So putting it on the cloud was sort of the first step. Processing using analysis and AI is the next thing. And there's no way you can scale this by yourself. That's why this cloud native is so critical, right? It's the scaling. You want to do climate, you want to do weather, I'm sorry. There's no other way to do this today, right?
Okay. And so an event run by Linda Stevens, another female leader in geospatial, was to do with cloud native geospatial. It was sort of run through LinkedIn. So yeah, okay, all right. So we're catching a theme here. All right. And then you said there was a transition to digital twins and gaming, and OGC. So yeah, tell us about digital twins.
Yeah, so the digital twins, I think it was like a big brouhaha for a lot of people, but for us who've been doing this for a long time, it was like, people, this is what we've been talking about all along. If you think about it, right? What, the ultimate goal of this geographic information system where you have the data, but then it becomes dynamic and not just the static, and then it's linked, and then you can, wasn't this what we were dreaming of or envisioning? It's not a dream, it's like a vision. So I think it's just like finally things are coming together. 3D is here, streaming. So it's like, I have to give a shout out to, the 3D tiles and Cesium, who's now Bentley, right?
I was about to mention them. Yep.
This is huge. This is like huge. It's transformative. It's like every one of these things takes you, it's not like stepwise. It becomes, right? There's here you are, you're now at the next level of the game. Now, speaking of the game,
yes,
which was finally, I'm cool with my kids, and and I tell them it's just like when I started.
Game engines.
So cool. Yes. So for Unreal to have a georeferencing plugin and to announce it, that was huge, right?
Oh, does it have that now?
Yeah.
When was that?
So this is Unreal Engine 4.27. I don't know what version they're on. Introduces the georeferencing plugin. I think if you Google it, you'll find it. This is huge, which means because they also started to add these plugins. So you have plugin for like Black Shark data. That's not, I call them, it's not like my kids, PlayStation Spider-Man. It's done the real New York. It's the real pick whatever.
So you can just have reality as your base map, or you can have the base reality that I presume you can subscribe to all sorts of providers that will do, weekly scans, monthly scans, yearly scans. You can subscribe to whatever frequency you want. And then there's, your, expanding the New York Metro. So here's your digitally assured rendering for the proposed metro that's against, in Unreal Engine reality. Amazing.
Yeah, it's very cool.
Wow. So we're all suddenly we have to become Unreal specialists now. Okay.
It's very cool. I bet Unity is doing, their own thing.
Yep,
so this is like, because I was working with this, and I tell them, it's like, this is when I'm like, ooh, we are cool now. So I was in this event, right? Because from Digital Twins, we started, we became in the middle of this metaverse conversation as well, right? So I was one time on this panel with Pixar, right? Because, they want that data as background to movies. Think about it, right? Why fake things if you can get the real thing? And this is one of many things, because there's a whole standardization. They have 3D models, whatever. I had the Roblox chief scientist who also sent my kids a lot of cool stuff, actually. But I told them it was so funny, like after that panel, you mentioned LinkedIn, and all of a sudden I'm getting like Hollywood people requests to LinkedIn. I'm like, that is, you talk about transformational, crossing boundaries,
Oh my God. Wow.
It's cool. It's very cool.
I'm seeing the real vision now.
So there is, I'll try to find it. I wish I remember his name. He gave a keynote speech at, actually, I think the GON Symposium 2-3 years ago. Some Oscar winner in Hollywood who was one of the first to actually use, our, not just the satellite imagery, but then the whole 3D, like the elevation models, whatever, in a movie.
Crazy.
Right?
Okay. How fascinating and amazing, and what a source of pride for our industry that our outputs are even of interest to Hollywood. That's incredible.
Absolutely.
Nadine.
Yeah. we're everywhere. So I'll tell you where else. I mean, it's only gonna get better. Hopefully, if we, we deliver, right? There are a lot of moving parts. The other one is now everybody's talking. I don't know, map GPT, Earth GPT.
Hey,
So
I was there first with I did a Maps GPT episode last year with
who? With
it was with the guys from proxy.co. Melanie, I forgot her surname. But yeah, anyway, sorry to interject, just to say.
I have to listen to that. But how cool. I mean, I have these it's this where we are right now with we're not talking about data anymore, which is really great. And we're talking about questions that the data can answer, hence like the generative AI. It's like, actually create me new data based on all this data. It's really, and it's from, show me all the evacuation routes, or, tell me how long will my roof last, I like to use these examples that's another conversation, that are human related, disaster related, climate related, because it's in our face in a way. So that's a whole, you want another mind blowing, and maybe I'll shut up. Maybe.
Please don't. Please go.
Think about this. I think, is it this year or last year? I think it's this year, and like this summer, Planet Labs, right, and NVIDIA, right, have this major announcement that they're going to start to put NVIDIA chips on the satellite so that you can do the processing
at
there.
the edge. That's at the definition of the edge.
So how cool that eventually it's not like, here's all your data, determine if things are going to be flooded, and all you get is flooding alert, right? And we can, I mean, you still need the data, blah, 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 but it's just like, this is how good we can be.
But I don't know if you've heard of Fathom. Fathom is a flooding analytics company. They're actually based in Bristol, but they were recently purchased by Swiss Re, which is this Swiss reinsurance company. And I did an episode with them. They were the one that I recently finished editing. So that the next logical step is implementing at the edge using GPUs from NVIDIA. And by the way, Fathom in their data center uses GPUs. So you could basically deploy the algorithms at the edge on the constellation. Amazing.
That is amazing.
Bonkers.
It's very, very amazing. It is. Now, I tell you this, I mean, I get very excited, but then I think the reality brings you back. I just came back, for instance, I'm on the US National Geospatial Advisory Committee. I'm also on the UN, GGIM, Global Geospatial Information. And I think this is when you go back to reality. Because in these groups, which are more like government driven, right? So what do we talk about? There's no, authoritative address layer for the US. There's no parcel. Yeah, you go back to the basics. It's like the
they haven't managed that?
Yeah, so Amazon has, right? The Census Bureau has, but we haven't, there's still duplication of efforts. There's still no data sharing, right? There's still public versus private. That's why you hear a lot of the public-private partnerships. There's still the model of like the parcel data is, again, this is to me very eye-opening, because it happens at the local level.
At the state
level? It happens
level?
at the local level, which is great. It's even lower than the state.
Really?
But then you need to bubble it up. Because again, now we're dealing with floods, with hurricanes that do not respect any boundary, whatever boundary. So we haven't figured out, even though we have technologies and ways, because it's not just technology, it's also governance. It's changing how we do things. And I think this is where I've been using, I've been using, for a couple of years, and I start my presentations with the rover on Mars. How cool! We have we sent a helicopter-sized thingy, and it was bringing back videos, right? But here we are still dealing with, like, same
We don't
things,
have a national
flooding.
parcel fabric even from the US, the supposedly most advanced economy in the world.
Yeah. So you have pieces of it, industry's trying to fill, but it's just like, when are we going to get beyond this to the problems? Because the problem is not parcel or address or buildings, or the problem is, where are these people going to go? When is the next hurricane?
Yeah.
Agriculture, I'll talk to you more about that. It's
well, so I mean, I have a real world example for the results of Hurricane Milton. So when we were in Atlanta last week, there were a couple of people who came to our hotel who had made the 14-hour drive from Tampa up to seek refuge from the storm in this hotel. So of course they had no issues due to a lack of a national parcel fabric with that journey. Apart from the fact that they didn't have high-speed rail or some more efficient way of making that journey, they had to do a 14-hour drive, which was, again, in the world's most advanced economy, concerning to know that they had to make that using a car. But yeah, it's interesting to know that there were these concerns hampering perhaps relief efforts in terms of the spatial data. So yeah.
I appreciate you bringing this example, and this is now, again, like we keep going back, we can have like so much to talk about, but to me there's something there, and I felt it. I mean, even with the standards development, and like, we have become, as a society, right? I think in general, I'm not talking about the US, I think as we're very short-term focused. Like, who is working on the longer term, right? The genuine climate resilience of communities, right? I know there are a lot of efforts, and right, between COP and GEO, the group on Earth observations. Like, there are a lot of, but maybe this should be the topic from the highest levels to the lowest levels. Climate resilience in this case.
Right. Yeah. The basic, the building blocks to execute on the platforms that generate the analytics that support a response. Yeah. But your point is that we still have to go back to the basics in some way. Okay. Right. So perhaps that is a segue to what philanthropists could do. For example, Andy Taylor.
Yeah, so this is interesting because Andy Taylor is the chairman of Enterprise, right? So if you've rented a car recently,
oh sure,
they have I think the largest fleet of vehicles. It's not I think, they have the largest fleet in the world. So this is huge. Of course, it's eventually all location. But I think this is where the nice story is. So Andy Taylor is from St. Louis, and he cares a lot about his community. So St. Louis, for those who don't know, it's like literally in the middle of the country. That's why they have that arch, and it has a long history. But it also houses the US National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, right? And they are investing in a $2 billion complex, like a brand new, plus a little bit changing how they interact with the outside world. So more unclassified work, which means engagement, more engagement with the community. So where Andy Taylor comes in, and essentially the whole St. Louis community, they said this is a great opportunity, right, to sort of like come together and do geospatial for everybody, right? And so they have a whole roadmap called GeoFutures, which has, universities and schools K-12, and they have, accelerators and incubators, etc. And in the middle almost of it is, I call it the brains which is the research, which is this Taylor Geospatial Institute. So they're like, let's fund an institute that works with this whole ecosystem to start pumping out good ideas that can be commercialized, etc., etc., etc. So I think this is when, you know, we have a great opportunity to engage more. I've been saying we have the model private-public partnerships, PPP, and we need an additional P, which is philanthropists. So it's philanthropist, public-private partnership, and we need the right mission. So in our case, so I've been there for a year, and you can see why you know, when I saw that opportunity, I'm like, it's an opportunity to do something different and impactful. So I'll give it a shot. So we're saying, let's, if we're here to start the ideas, our vision is then to spark this revolution in geospatial. And the way we do it is, we're saying our niche, in a way, is to build multi-institution teams that are cross-disciplinary, that solve, you know, some complex problems. So
I'm so excited.
Yeah, it starts with this admission, right, that it's too big. We gotta collaborate with other people. And not collaborate I'm checking a box, blah, 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 but actually roll up your sleeves and actually work with people on solving problems.
Okay, so I am somewhat well placed to respond here, given that I have nominated myself as the custodian of the Geospatial Index, which is tracking all 350 publicly traded geospatial companies. Amongst those, about 125 or so are pure play geospatial across 26 sub-indices. So everything from aerial imagery to analytics to maps, for example, Map My India, to surveying, and of course, spatial finance, which is basically all of the insurance companies which would have had a lot of activity recently, for example, in response to Hurricane Helene and Milton. So what would these 350 companies do to contribute to and thereby benefit from? Is there like a real world example or project or problem that the Institute would direct their funds, attention, and intellectual capital at?
Yeah, this is, yes. That's a big yes. So I think
So
there are
you
many
mentioned
ways.
agriculture, for example. Sorry to cut in, you know, let's look at that.
Yeah, so I want to go with actually two, where we said we're going to focus our energies. It's not as much agriculture, but food security, like global food security. And the other one is AI, right? So, and I call it, it's two axes. There's an impact axis that we can collaborate on. So that's food security. And there's a technology that, back to the democratization of everything we're doing, that we can also all contribute to. So I'll start with the food security. So the idea is, we're calling it, it's actually a whole initiative called Geospatial Innovation for Food Security. So we're not the food security experts, right? We're the geospatial people. So we want to bring the experts, actually we're doing that in November, first to try to figure out what is the gap there that we can solve. Because the last thing I want is to just do something that somebody else is doing. That's a waste of money and resources. So that's an amazing way for these companies to come in and say, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. Did you know that there's this? I have this data set. I have this new technology that's like a combination of drone and satellite, and it charges itself. I mean, there's like so much, again, right? There's soil monitoring. And the whole idea is, where is the problem? And it starts, I mean, it's we'll see where it goes, but it starts with, again, the climate has, you know, ramifications, and what you're planting today is not going to work tomorrow. And there are, you know, we had a meeting at UN GGIM. I had a meeting with the Canadian, representative, and he's like, there are areas in Canada which are now places you can plant where you couldn't plant before. So it's like, so how do we, again, I go back to prepare for that change. And then from there, so there's a whole area of collaboration just there. And then you take it up a notch. It's the supply chain. How is that impact, how you get your rice or whatever. Again, this is my area, is my expertise is not in the problem. We are, and that's why we need the collaboration. We're the geospatial innovators.
So is a result, because that immediately makes me think, surely the UN or a similar body has taken responsibility for developing initially and then maintaining some sort of just a vector data, like a polygon data set of the arable land areas of the world. And I guess each year incrementally, and it sounds a bit scary, but the implication is that maybe that will reduce. Then again, maybe climate change will expand it for some types of crops in some ways. So yeah, is an output of this work that that the Institute will have some sort of online resource that you can just consume that shows the area of arable land and how that changes over time? Is that an output, or?
You're giving me my segue to, I think this is the relationship to what we're trying to do with AI.
Sure.
Right. So actually, again, we're working closely with our sister organization called the Tailored Geospatial Engine, and what they're working on. And so you'd think, oh, it's so easy, I'll have the polygons, blah, blah, blah. Actually, it's not easy at all. In that case, they've been working for the last 6 months to produce all open source, open data. I mean, we're aiming open science, right? Reproducible.
Awesome.
What they call field boundaries. It's something very simple. Because say Planet, or again, I'm not trying to advertise, but Planet, has a picture of the Earth every day, right? So how amazing would it be if you have...
Hang on. I'll put in some extra constellations there. So the last episode was with ESPA Satellites, which is an Australian hyperspectral startup, which is related to a Canadian one, Wyvern. So yeah, I've profiled them both. So there we go. I'm adding some extra ones.
Perfect. But this idea of then you have, using AI, the field boundaries, right? So you can even then track the change at the field level.
Amazing.
Right? And it's then, as you're saying, it's one example of a global resource, because you don't want anybody wasting their time in a way, because now that's what everybody's doing. This is the starting point. I think you hit the nail on the head.
Land acquisition, yeah.
And imagine what else. And what we're trying to do is, what is this then? We want to build a fair, open research infrastructure, right? So, how is that looking like? I mean, again, I said it earlier, hint, it's cloud-based.
Wow. So it's not just geospatial, it's literal. It is, and I love this as a concept, and that's why I like to reverse the whole GIS acronym, and it's information systems about geography. In a similar way, you're pointing to the fact that these outputs are based on science, and there's a broader global scientific community effort here. Amongst its many outputs, there is this polygon or this footprint of farmable land.
Absolutely. Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. And you go back to, again, lowering the barrier. So you don't need to be an expert. The industry, the insurance industry or first responders or whatever, just like, here's the data set. It's very simple. You can describe it using Stack. You can get it using some standard. Go do whatever you need to do. Let us handle, right, all the complexity of geospatial to get you there.
Amazing. I mean, I'm just thinking about this also from the perspective of a, medium-sized consultancy, multidisciplinary one that has, a team of 20 geospatial people amongst, 15 other teams that together assess a feasibility for infrastructure or farming or whatever. It's sounding like this institute is incredibly important to be a member of, or to have a relationship with, to make it easier to get to the point of insight more cheaply and faster.
Yes, and I think we feel like I mean, we can play so many roles in a way, like, there's actually so much to do. We need more, but for example, in the food security, we're doing a generative AI challenge with Amazon Web Services to just like give me 3 plans for a potential city in in Saudi Arabia, for example, right? Just like these things.
Heaven forbid.
Where we're
Well, okay.
requiring.
I'll respond to that one. I'll respond to
Tell me.
that one with this. So, dear AI, yes, indeed. Please do give me 3 city plans for Saudi Arabia. That actually is a vital question to answer. And I dearly hope, AI, that you will give us a plan that is not a 170-kilometer long line.
Yeah, that's a good, or this is where, yeah, it's sustainable, etc., right? I mean,
I would love to know the output. And I would
yeah,
love to know
yeah,
what the AI says if I
yeah,
propose to it that I do build a
yeah,
170-kilometer long line in Saudi Arabia that's 500
yeah,
meters high, that's going to kill
yeah,
off all the migratory birds. And by
yeah,
the way, have all sorts of horrendous impacts on tribal communities that don't derive any benefit. I
yeah.
would love to hear. I'm being a bit, what can I say, opinionated here, but I think it's warranted.
No, I think this is again, I think you're highlighting many things. It's I think the impacts of any project on the environment, the biodiversity,
And the world's
the future
most
sustainability.
vulnerable
Yeah,
populations. Yes. Sorry to cut you off, but I agree.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And this is where, I mean, we can have a whole thing about AI, because that's sort of like the biggest thing, the AI bias and what data you're feeding it, and how you're using it. I mean, there's a whole set of work, I think, in that domain. And what I've been hearing, so if you follow Kevin Pomfret, for example, he has this new book
I
on
have been reaching out
geospatial
to him.
law. So, and it's his point is well taken, because he says, say in on the high level AI conversations about ethical and responsible, etc. It's like, where are you, geospatial people? Are you at the table? Who's representing that we can be dangerous with what we can do? You want to say?
Free the map. And I'm really looking forward to having Hank van Houten on to carry the conversation about ethics here, and to have the true academics response, unbounded by commercial realities, to extend these topics about ethics here.
So, I mean, ethics, I would also like, there's the Locust Charter, if you
Really?
reach out to somebody like Chris Tucker, for instance, who was behind this whole ethical geos, if you go to ethicalgeo.org, and I mean, there are the principles, but they have examples. And I think what hurts sometimes is the examples of how do you use geospatial, actually it's the opposite, to target certain communities, to discriminate, because you can do whatever you want with the data. It's not about, so I think, again, there's a whole different thing. And I love the geospatial community in general. You feel they care more, because we're a little bit different, because we're closer to earth and geography and people.
I completely agree.
Yeah.
And there's an opportunity there even to actually avail these vulnerable communities of these AI tools. There's a way too. Speaking of conspiracy of cartographers.
I love that shirt.
Let's live it. All right, Nadine, that was an absolutely amazing tour of your career starting at MIT and the power that MIT can unleash upon the world when it comes to inserting its academics, or people with that academic background, in foundations that generate standards that enable us all to work together more easily. And then it seems like you've got the Taylor Geospatial Institute not only, but also the engine behind you to continue to make a broad impact on not just the geospatial world, but our world when it comes to humanity responding to disasters and figuring out how to make the world accessible to and to benefit the world's most vulnerable. So it's a huge privilege to hear from you, Nadine.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me, and thank you for this amazing conversation, but also your summary. If you could please write it down for me so I can. It's a great executive summary. I like it.